Hello and welcome to the Pots and Trowels podcast with me, Martin Fish, joined as usual by Sean and Jill.
Hi.
Hello. And we've got some really great stuff coming up in this edition. We've got some information about exciting gardening feature that Martin and Jill are going to be working on all through the coming year. And Jill, we've got some other stuff going on, haven't we?
We're going to talk over a few jobs that you can be doing. You need to maybe burn off a few calories after all that holiday food, and you want to get outside to get some fresh air. So a few jobs, and then we've got a couple of questions as well that have been sent in by our Pots and Trowel video watchers. So yeah, they'll be coming up on the podcast as well. But first, let's go and have a chat to Steve Ott, who is the editor of Kitchen Garden magazine.
Hello, Steve, and thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast. Steve, like me, you've worked in horticulture for a few years now, haven't you? So tell us how it all... 1 or 2, exactly. So how did it all start for you?
Well, I wondered if you might ask me that, Martin. So, being of a certain age, I had to go and check out my CV to remember how it all started and remind myself what I've actually done. So yeah, I think like as with most gardeners, it was family really. So it all started with my dad, which I think a lot of people will be will ring bells with an awful lot of people listening. So yeah, my dad, he was a landscape gardener and a greenkeeper as a profession. But he loved growing chrysanthemums for show, and he loved growing veg, and he used to grow fuchsias for showing as well. So I just got hooked by sort of helping him out at the weekends when I wasn't at school and in the evenings, and it went from there really.
And did you then go straight into horticulture from leaving school?
Yes. I did. The thing we might find as we're chatting, all the companies I might mention, they don't exist anymore. But
is that sort of a common theme running through it?
I realised that when I was thinking about it. I don't think it's because I worked for them. I think it was, just over time, really. But no, I left school and went straight into an apprenticeship at a place called Rochford's Houseplants, which was in Hoddesdon in Hertfordshire.
And they were famous, weren't they, in the day?
They were in the day.
Big nurseries, yeah.
Yeah. It was 35 acres, I think, of nothing but pot plants. So spent 3 years there, and then moved on to college. So I did 3 years at college after that.
Which college were you at, Steve?
I went to Oaklands, which near St Albans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so did 3 years there. Excuse me. That was like a sandwich course. So the middle year was off working on a nursery.
Right. And if I remember rightly, Oaklands College was famous for being a glasshouse college, wasn't it?
That's
because
right,
I've got
yeah.
another friend that went there. So yeah, so it'd be perfect for the houseplant side of things, wouldn't it?
That's it, yeah. That's exactly why I ended up there, yeah, because they did. They're one of the few colleges, I think, at the time anyway, who did a glasshouse crops course. So learned about growing tomatoes and things like that, and lettuces and more pot plants.
Yeah. Well, obviously people are listening to this on a podcast, so they can't see us. But I'm looking at you sitting at home in your home office. It looks very grand at the back. And I noticed you've got a plant on the mantelpiece or the shelf behind you, the other side. So, yeah. So is that a spider plant I can see?
It is. It certainly is. It's a very green spider plant because it's quite dark in this room. But yeah, that's it. Yeah. So
there you go. It's got some little plantlets on it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, see, is that one you got from Rochford's all those years ago?
I don't think they're that long-lived, Martin, really. No. What you can't also see is my growing lights in the corner, which the neighbours will wonder what I'm growing, I think, in the evening when the lights go out, and I've still got these pink growing lights going on through the shining out through the windows. But it's just chilies. So
just chilies. You're getting them going, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So after college, what did you do then? Because we've got a long career to fill here.
Various nurseries, really. South Coast mostly. So, which is obviously famous for nurseries because it's got the best light down there, isn't it? So things like cut flowers, cut chrysanthemums, more pot plants, tomatoes, all sorts of things, really. So yeah, worked on nurseries for quite a few years, and then moved into giving advice on gardening for a gardening company.
Are they still on the go, or have they gone as well?
They've gone as well, Martin. Yes.
So who was that? Who was that?
Well, they were called Fisons. Haven't
Right.
actually gone, I suppose. They've just morphed, haven't they? So they're several reincarnations since I was there. But yeah, I was really there to give gardening advice to people who wrote in. Actually, people did write letters in those days, so it was actually answering letters with letters, unheard of. But
Yeah.
now, but yeah, so, and then that was fascinating because it was just great, just answering people's queries and uh, a good feeling when you could help them and find the answer. Not so good when you didn't know the answer, but when you could, it was great.
But I always think answering questions, because I've done a similar thing where you've done them, I've done them for magazines where in the days when they all had to be written
Yes.
as a reply. But it's a great learning curve as well, isn't it? Because even if you're not sure about the answer, you can then research it. And I always felt when I was answering questions like that, I was continually learning and gaining more knowledge myself.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, yeah. That was the fun part of the job for me, I think. Yeah, was you're actually being paid to sit and learn more about plants and pests and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing. Very lucky.
So fast forward, you are now, have been for a number of years, and we will talk more about this in part two, but you are the editor of Kitchen Garden magazine. But before that, how did you get into the world of magazines and gardening magazines?
Yeah, well, I suppose it was the job, the at Fison's really, the answering gardeners' questions, where I was more in, I suppose you'd call it PR than actually growing. So from there, I got into journalism. So I was first on a magazine, which I'm sure your listeners will have heard of as well, which is Garden News, which is a famous gardening weekly. So I worked on that for 10 years before moving to become editor of Kitchen Garden. So
Which is how we met, of course, isn't it? That's
that's
how we
right.
very
Yeah.
first met, 30 probably years ago now,
Oh my
sort of thing, I
goodness, that
suppose.
long. Oh, my.
Yeah, well, it must be getting on for that, Steve.
Gotta
Yeah,
be.
when you
Yeah.
joined Garden News, you were my direct contact. Well, it's probably late 20s. I've been writing for Garden News for 30 years, and I think I'd probably been writing a few years when you joined. But so yeah, it's late 20s. And that's a weekly, of course. So you must have been a very busy job, because you turning out a weekly publication is quite difficult, isn't it?
It is, yeah, quite a big team at the time. I'm sure there probably still is. But yeah, it's you get through an awful lot of material in with 4 issues a month. So I mean, one of the biggest jobs was literally thinking of ideas, constantly thinking of ideas to fill a magazine, you know,
Yeah.
4 times a month. Um, it seems difficult enough on a monthly, but
Yeah.
very difficult on a weekly, I have to say. Yeah, hats
So
off to them.
you Yeah, absolutely. So cut your teeth doing the weeklies, and then came along, a glossy monthly magazine, Kitchen Garden, and that's quite a few years ago now, and you've been the editor ever since. So that would have been quite different, I suppose, suddenly to be the editor in charge of a magazine, and it's a very good magazine, isn't it? Kitchen Garden,
Well, I
is
like to
it?
think so. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it is
Some good
absolutely a
writers.
very good magazine. Thank you. Yes. So, I mean, that must have been quite a nice elevation, though, wasn't it, to become the editor? I mean, it's quite a grand title, editor of a magazine.
Well, it sounds very grand. It does sound very grand. Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, I was stuffing envelopes this morning, Martin, when before we spoke. But yeah, yeah. I mean, it's again, it's a lot of planning. Often, up to a year ahead. I mean, we're already now working on a March well, yeah, starting work on a March issue. So we're always working a few months ahead, but you're planning perhaps a year ahead. And as you'll know, as a writer, you know what you're going to be writing about month by month throughout the whole year. So it's all planned, of course.
Absolutely, yes. And I know that very soon, if I haven't sent my copy, I'll get a nice little reminder from Steve saying, "Oh, don't forget your copies due, Martin." So, yes.
Yeah,
So, well,
absolutely.
I want to find out more about Kitchen Garden. We're going to have a little break for now. And then when we come back, we're going to hear all about Kitchen Garden magazine. You can really sell it to me, Steve. And then I want to know about your garden as well, because I haven't seen your garden for a long time. So you can bring us up to date with what's happening in the Ott garden.
Lovely. Look forward to it.
Okay, so that makes me wonder, have you filed your copy for the next edition yet, Mr. Fish?
About to be fair. Off when we'd stopped the recording, we had a little chat, and Steve did remind me. But he said because it's Christmas, we won't be starting to work on it afterwards. So I think it's technically due. Is it the 24th of the month? So it's Christmas Eve. You can't send it. But it's not only me. It is also Jill, because I write for them. But Jill does one of the cookery pages there, or cookery feature every month.
Yeah, but we've got an exciting new year ahead, really, a writing year, haven't we? Because we're starting in March. Steve mentioned the March copy, didn't he? The magazine. And we are starting to do a bit of a diary about our new veg plot.
Yes, we are. I mean, I've been writing them for years, but what we're doing this time is we've photographed the new vegetable garden that we built here over the since we started it last spring, month by month. So we'll be doing it as a diary of how it's developed and what we're growing in there. And you're going to link a recipe to each month, aren't you?
Yeah, so whatever is coming out of the veg plot in that particular month, then I'm going to do a really quick recipe, and that will, it will work alongside it. So I'm excited about writing that.
Yeah.
And we've taken so many photos this last year. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It is. It's choosing them.
Go on, I was going to ask that question. How do you do it? Obviously, there's time taken to produce a magazine, and are you doing it from when you started building the garden last spring, or am I letting people into trade secrets now? Is that okay to say that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, I mean, with kitchen garden, we tend to, Steve won't mind me saying, with kitchen garden, we tend to work a year in advance. So we've by sort of the autumn of this year, I would normally have given Steve, or between us, we'd have worked my topics out. For the last year or two, I've been talking about a different vegetable each month, so he will have a list, and he needs to know that a year in advance, because he then cross-references with all the other writers to make sure they're doing something different that month.
You don't have the month of the carrot, for instance.
As a result, we tend to
everyone ends up filing copy about carrots.
Exactly.
Yeah, you need a spread, don't you?
Yeah.
Exactly, over the year. So we tend to take the photographs a year in advance, and we're also for next year doing a couple of sort of special features, one in a walled garden, one with a cider apple grower in Nottinghamshire. So we're doing all the photography now, so we've got it ready to go out next year. So yes, we do work quite a long time in advance with Steve. Yeah. Which is good. It means I know I've got a year's work.
I'm interested in that cider apple grower. Is that somewhere we can do a video soon? Because that sounds interesting.
Yes, it is. Well, it's not far. It's sort of midway between where we both lived, Sean. So we could meet up there, get a taxi home, and we'd be fine.
Well, we're actually joining in their wassailing event, aren't we? Which is
January.
Coming up.
Yes,
so we'll be taking some pictures of that.
And we'll take the recorder and do a little bit of wassailing. We could do, yes. I've never been wassailing before.
No, I haven't.
I think you sing, don't you, and hit trees with branches or something like that.
I don't know.
I have no idea. What time of year? Is it normally a Christmas thing or like a winter thing, wassailing? Is it?
It's early January, yeah.
Okay. Maybe we need to have a big, long planning session about that one and do some research, test out some ciders in advance and just make sure that, we know what we're doing. Meanwhile, should we go back and hear a bit more from Steve?
So, Steve, tell me, as the editor of Kitchen Garden magazine, tell me a little bit more about the content of the magazine. If anybody's never seen it or heard of it, what can they expect when they buy a copy of Kitchen Garden?
Yeah, sure, Martin. Well, it's been going since the 90s, and it's always been a specialist veg growing magazine. We try and cater for everybody, really. So, if you've been growing veg for a long time, hopefully you'll find something for you, or if you're just starting out. And that's become really important lately, because finding a lot more people are getting into fruit and veg growing, especially after COVID and the problems there, where people were worried about food security and also the cost of food. So it's all become very popular now. But yeah, started in the 90s. As I say, try and cater for everybody. So whether you know a lot or only know a little. And we try and keep up with latest trends as well. Because I think one of the fascinating parts of the job, and apart from sort of planning ahead and all that sort of thing and deciding what's going to go in and talking to lovely writers like yourself, it's keeping up with new trends. And I think I always imagined when I was getting into gardening that it was something that didn't change that much. That, if you maybe started 30, 40 years ago or more, the rules would still be the same now. But actually, I've noticed in particularly the last 10 years, how things are changing and people's attitudes to gardening are changing. And not so much the sort of methods that, how to take a cutting and all that, and how to sow seeds is obviously always the same. But I think what people want to get from it is changing. And so it's, trying to reflect that in the magazine as well.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot more people growing fruit and veg, as you've mentioned already.
Yeah.
Lockdown was probably a turning point, but lots of people are now, even if they can't grow enough to keep them going for the year, they can grow a few, as you've talked about, chili peppers or a few tomatoes or salads. So I think it's become more inclusive for people, isn't it? Now it's not just about allotments. Anybody can grow, even on a windowsill, you can grow something to eat.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. And it's encouraging people just to have a go. So, if you buy a copy of the magazine, you'll always get some free seeds. So, that's just, you haven't even got to buy the seeds then. You just give it a go, and we'll give you the information in the magazine to tell you how to get the best out of them. But yeah, just a tomato plant on a balcony or a sunny patio, or a cucumber or a few beans or something, just to get started. It's very, very easy.
And as the editor, I suppose you have to have a productive vegetable garden, don't you? I mean, I know you've been in horticulture all your working life, and you're a grower. And I mean, did you find it a change for you, or did you already grow vegetables before you became the editor?
Yeah, oh yeah, always grown veg. I say my dad used to grow veg, and I always tried to do the same as soon as I had a garden and a little bit of space. So I've always had a veg plot, or I've had several allotments in the past. But yeah, now I've still got a veg plot in the garden, greenhouse and a polytunnel, just a small greenhouse and a polytunnel. We're only growing for two these days, so don't need to grow lots, but it's a great place to be able to just get out and obviously try and experiment a little bit as well, because I'm growing because of the magazine. I like to grow new varieties and things like that, try new methods, so that I can actually talk about them with a little bit more authority then in the magazine if I've actually done these things or grown these varieties. So partly I'm just growing for two, for myself and the missus. And partly it's so that I can try out new things, and also, of course, take photos and things for the magazine. So it's always important for me to have a veg plot.
Yes, and I don't know whether you're the same as I am, Steve, but I, for much of my working life in horticulture, growing fruit and veg hasn't been how I made my living. Now, obviously, I write about it for you, but I've always grown fruit and veg, and that's what got me into gardening, I think, in the first place, like lots of other people. But I think it's that instinct, that sort of hunter-gatherer. I just love to be able to go out and to get, some veg from the garden or pick some fruit, whether you're eating it fresh or whether you're freezing it. It's just providing for your family, and I get a great kick out of that.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, no, it is. It's lovely to be able to do that. And it genuinely does taste better. I can't really think of anything that you can't grow yourself that doesn't taste better than you can buy in the shops. It's really is, really lovely. And of course, it gives you access to more varieties as well. So we mentioned tomatoes. Well, there's, I don't know how many hundreds of varieties of tomatoes there must be in the seed catalogues, but they've all got a different taste. And picking them fresh from the plant, they're just so much better.
Absolutely, it is that flavour, isn't it? That because it is fresh, you get that fresh flavour with it. Now, Christmas has just gone. We've had Christmas Day. It's now. This will go out on New Year's Eve. So, what did you pick from your garden that was on your Christmas dinner plate this year, Steve?
Yeah, well, we still managed to get some potatoes. Believe it or not, we've still got potatoes, which are grew in pots. I haven't got masses of space. So potatoes tend to take up quite a bit of room, don't they? Haven't got a lot of space, so I grow mine in pots on a patio. And I managed to save a few pots which had obviously already died down now, cut the tops off, put them in the polytunnel and let them dry out. So got a few pots of potatoes had a few pots for Christmas dinner. Parsnips, always like to grow a few parsnips. I'm probably the only one in the family who really likes parsnips, if I'm honest, but so everyone has to have a few, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I do like me
What about Brussels sprouts? Because that's a bit of a contentious one in our household.
a bit love-hate, aren't they, Brussels sprouts? But actually, we quite like them. We do quite like sprouts. So just grow a few. It is literally just enough for Christmas dinner and not very much more. Because again, haven't got an awful lot of space, and they do take up a little bit of room. Always try and grow a few parsnips. And even at this time of year, I've got a few salads going as well. So although it's not actually strictly for Christmas dinner, you don't want to be eating a great big cooked meal all the time. So Boxing Day, we do. I pride myself on having a few salads for Boxing Day. So just a few little bits and pieces, a few salad leaves. Which
is nice to do, isn't it? Because you don't need masses in the winter, but it is nice when you do want a bit of salad to think you can get it off a windowsill or your polytunnel or wherever. Yeah. Absolutely, yes, absolutely. So, kitchen garden's going well. You also do a podcast, don't you? Your kitchen garden have been doing it for a while now, I believe.
That's right. Yes, I think we're on something like 130, 140 perhaps programs. Can't think of the word. Not programs, is it?
Episodes, I think.
Episodes is the word.
Yes, episodes, I think. Yes.
Martin. Thank you very much. Yes, that's right. You can find that. We like yourself, we chat to other gardeners. I'm very lucky to have a team of on Kitchen Garden magazine. We've got a team of writers who are a couple of colleagues at work who are also very keen veg growers. So we'll just chat amongst ourselves about what to do that month. On the podcasts, or as I say, we'll go out and about and talk to other gardeners, and you can find that on the website, or just go to all the usual places you get your podcasts.
Okay, and what is the Kitchen Garden website, Steve?
It's all the W's, www.kitchengarden.co.uk.
kitchengarden.co.uk. So they can find out everything they need to know on there, not only about the podcasts, but also about subscribing and getting the magazine and lots of other information.
That's right. Yeah. You'll find everything.
Good.
There.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's good. And I'm glad that you do like parsnips, because we love parsnips at our house. So as I say, it's the Brussels, and it is that nice thing just to go out and get them. It's a little bit early, I know, to be starting a lot off. But what can people be doing if they want to grow veg? Sort of thinking about doing things through January. Any little tips just to finish off with, Steve, to get people inspired to grow a little bit of their own?
Yes, well, if you buy the next issue of Kitchen Garden magazine, which I think will be the February issue, there's a very good feature in there on growing sprouting seeds on the windowsill. So what can be easier than that? You only need a jam jar and a few seeds, things like mung beans, coriander. In fact, most of the veg seeds you can grow in the garden, you can grow as sprouting seeds, really nutritious. But I'm also thinking now about starting off chili peppers and sweet peppers, which need a little bit of heat and a propagator, but you can start those off pretty soon. We start them off now. Tomatoes. If you've got a heated greenhouse, you could think about starting some tomatoes. Otherwise, it's a good time to be looking through the seed catalogues and choosing some varieties. And preparing for the year ahead. So getting the soil ready, clearing your patch. If you haven't got an allotment, perhaps think, or a veg patch, perhaps think about converting a little bit of the lawn or a few, make a bit of space on the borders.
Yeah, and like you say, you don't need a huge amount of ground to grow quite a lot of veg all through the year. So great time to prepare, isn't it? Steve, I'm going to let you get back, because I know you've got to water your spider plant and you've probably got to tend your chili peppers under your grow lamp. So thank you for taking the time out to have a catch up, and hopefully see you soon.
It's been a real pleasure, Martin. Thank you very much for having me on.
I I don't know if you remember, Martin, but a few years ago you gave me a couple of chili plants for the children, for the boys, and they really enjoyed growing them, and I quite fancy doing that again. But is that something they could perhaps do in their bedrooms or something like that?
They could do. I mean, the problem with doing them in the bedrooms at this time of the year is the light levels are really low, and that's why Steve's got these grow lamps. You can buy quite inexpensive little grow lamp kits now. And you don't need any natural light with those, because they're providing exactly the artificial light that the seedlings need. So you could do, but then you've got to bear in mind, if you're growing them from seed now, you've got to keep them frost free and growing till you can put them out in the garden in May. So I would probably, Steve's got a greenhouse and a polytunnel where he can put them, but if you haven't got that, I would probably wait until maybe early March to sow them, and then they'll be ready to go out in May. But yeah, no, in fact, we're going to grow more ourselves this year, so we'll make sure we get some plants for the boys to have a go as well.
Fantastic. Charlie likes eating, my eldest Charlie likes eating chilies, he likes curries and things like that, but he was talking about trying to grow an avocado a while ago, which I think, people can do with cocktail sticks and water and all that sort of stuff, but I feel like that might be more effort than he's probably prepared to put in, but maybe I'm being unfair to him. Should we, we've got some questions in, haven't we? Should we get onto those? Your question for veggies, because we've got an onion video out, if those people who watch our videos will know, but for those who don't, we've got a video about growing onions out at the moment, so questions come in on that, hasn't it?
One of our Pots and Trowels viewers was watching the video, and he's got a kind of a follow-on question, because you're busy sowing some onion seeds, aren't you? We're going to have a go at some of the big mammoth, the big onions. But what he wants to know is, what are the benefits of sowing seeds over planting the onion sets later on in the spring?
Good question. Yes, because you can buy little onion sets which are just immature onions, buy them in early spring, plant them out March, April time, and they develop into a full-size onion by late summer, early autumn. I think the advantage of growing them from seed, there's a little bit more work involved, admittedly, but you can often grow varieties that you can't get as sets. So when you're buying onion sets, it's quite a limited range of onions that you can buy. And if you want something a little bit different, some of the older heritage types, for example, or like we've got these giant red onions from Robinson's, you can't buy those as onion sets. So the only way you can grow them is to do them from seed. I suppose you could argue that growing from sets is much easier and more convenient, but as I say, if you want something a little bit different, then you've got to grow them from seed. And you don't have to sow it now, although we've sown the end of December, you can sow right up until the end of February. It just means your plant's going to be a little bit behind, but they will catch up. They might not be quite as big, but you'll still get a really good crop from a February sowing. So worth going for it.
Worth giving it a go. We've had a question on YouTube, actually slight tangent from our kind of kitchen garden stuff, but on agapanthus. So we did a video a couple of years ago on agapanthus essential care, I think we called it, and we had Manuel Silva asking, does the same plant flower again in the spring from the one that just flowered?
So yeah, that's a good question in a way. Yes, it does. I mean, agapanthus is a perennial, so it lives for many, many years, and they take a few years to get to flowering size, and once they get to that stage, then they will flower every year, and it depends what type Manuel's got. Some are herbaceous, some die down, some stay evergreen, but it's that main clump that will flower the following year. So it should in theory get better every year. They do, if they're in pots, occasionally get very congested, and then that restricts the flowering. So that's the point when you would divide, and then those divisions will grow again and flower. So yep, you've got flowers for years to come by the sound of it, Manuel. Just keep it watered, keep it fed, and it'll be great. Absolutely.
Manuel doesn't say where they are in the world, so I'm just a little appeal. If you do send us a question, do tell us where you are, or as they used to say on a TV show here in the UK back in the day, what's your name and where do you come from? Do tell us that, and it just helps, doesn't it?
I think that's showing your age, isn't it? That is.
I'm always showing my age on this podcast, I think.
And I've got a few jobs to do. I mean, it's still not a busy time of the year. You can always find something to do. I like to.
I always think this is the tidy time of year, isn't it? Because we make all these New Year's resolutions. Our New Year's resolution every year is we're going to sort all the tools out. We're going to put them up on hooks. We'll see if this year might be the year.
Well, it might be.
Know.
We've only been here, this is only our second winter, and we've been busy doing other things. But yes, our little potting shed and tool store, that is definitely one that we need to do. We need, because I can't find anything in there. So,
but it's almost that you're preparing everything, aren't you, ready for the new gardening season? So it's having that tidy up and that clean up. It gets you ready for a good start in the spring. Then.
Yeah, and you do need to do it at this time of the year, because once we start getting busy in spring, you haven't got time to do it anyway, and then it slips back to another year, doesn't it?
If you're supposed to do it, we've got a video on how to do things like sharpening your secateurs, which you can always check out on YouTube. What else should we be thinking about, though, Martin, right now?
You can be doing things like, if you've got a little greenhouse and you've got some plants overwintering in there, just check them. You don't really have to do an awful lot at this time of the year, to be fair, but just check them, make sure there's no damaged leaves or yellow leaves, pick them off. It's a bit of tidying and hygiene, and just check the water. We water very little through the winter in a greenhouse, but we don't want to let plants completely dry out, otherwise they'll wither away. So just lift the pot. If it feels very dry, give it a spot of water, but it's more a check-in. And then on the back of what we were talking about last week with Christopher Pike on trees, if you've got trees in your garden and they're young trees and they've got a tree stake, we've had some quite windy weather over the last week or so. So it's a good time just to check them, because that tree stake for the first few years is to give them security in the ground, hold them stable to stop them rocking about backwards and forwards. So just check the tree stake, check the tie to make sure it's not tight and cutting into it. And just make sure plants establish well. And finally, if you don't want to go outside because you're still eating mince pies and drinking sherry,
chocolate,
anybody that's got houseplants, I know we looked at houseplant care a few weeks ago on the videos, but it's something that's an ongoing thing. So if you've got Christmas houseplants and they're in a warm room, they're going to dry out even in the winter. So just check the pot again, give them a drink, and just make sure they're all good. If you do it little and often, you can keep on top of things and keep them looking really, really good. So there's always something to do. But I think what we need to do is definitely go into that tool shed, Mrs. Fish.
I think it is. And that's also where our apples are stored. So I was just going to say, have a quick plug for checking on your stored fruit and veg as well, because we've got a couple of butternut squash left and some apples. So just keep your eye on them and just make sure that they're still okay.
I noticed there's still a couple of marrows in there. What are you going to do with those?
I'm not quite sure.
Well, I've grown them and I've harvested them and I've stored them, so I hope you're going to do something.
Well,
with
I made
them.
marrow and ginger jam already, so they were a bit surplus to requirements. But I might do something.
Do you know what I haven't had for years?
Stuffed marrow.
Stuffed marrow. I love a stuffed marrow. Have you ever had a stuffed marrow?
Stuff it with sprouts.
No.
I've had a stuffed marrow.
Well, I think I might do something with it and do a recipe on this podcast in a few weeks' time.
Right. Watch this space.
I think you should. Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.